for being here. Thank you to the town of Whitby for hosting this. This wouldn't be possible without having our sponsors and partners to help us. We also have Jay Kilcannon from RBC who has sponsored our breakfast this morning. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Just before we get to the main event, I ask you to go and have a look at our website at the list of videos that we have from this. There was one that we did that I thought was one of my favorite, was Audrey from the Marketing Kitchen. What was so great about it was that it was very easy to see what the process is for you to create sales for your business and all the tactics and steps she took. Now, it's on YouTube, so you can put it on fast forward. I don't ever watch anything on normal speed, so put it on fast forward, and you'll get through it much faster and cut out the get to the middle piece, right? The important, the potatoes. On your tables is a list of just the upcoming training and workshops we have at BACD. You can take a photo of it. That's why there's only one copy. And take a photo and then keep that with you. And then we also have the upsales, so take a photo of that as well so you have it. And can refer to it if you want to come to any of those. So what we need at BACD is we need our clients, we need people who need help with their business. And it's not help because something's going wrong. It's just like maybe you don't know what you don't know and you are looking for ways to problem solve and fix things, and sometimes two heads is better than one. So we'd love to have you come and see us. I'm here till the end. If you want to book any appointments, come and see us. But just to move on, I'd like to invite Frank up to come and speak. This is our third year in partnership for Upsales, and very happy to be able to partner and bring such great speakers out. Thank you, Frank, for arranging all our speakers.
Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. Listen, I'm delighted to be here with you guys every month. This is our 20th session. It's been running for 3 years. What you're going to hear today is some pretty cool stuff. I'm a big fan. By the way, I also wanted to thank you guys because I know you had choices where to be today, and we're delighted that you chose to be with us. Also, again, this could not be possible if you guys didn't show up, so thank you. Some of you have not missed a single one in the 20, so that's awesome. Also, we have Pavel in the room, who's one of our past speakers. Audrey, who the video we just talked about, fast forwarding all the way to the end, apparently. So I have a very cool role in this. I get to sort of suggest companies, and then between Daniel, myself, Angelo, even we include Jay as our sponsor, to sort of say, what do you think? So today's speakers is really an example of what could happen when the entire ecosystem gets behind a company, be it an innovation hub like a Spark Center, academia, they're from Trent University, good people that surrounded them, believed in their vision, and actually helping them make it come to life. So that's what's really cool about this story, and I won't take away from it, but as Daniel was saying, you know, we're not telling you that you need to be this company, but I can assure you that if you take some of their strategies on the sales growth, you can apply it to your business, and that's really what we try to do here, is get inspired to kick down doors and grow our sales, okay? So I'm going to give you a little bit of just a background, and then I'll have Sana and Ribat. So we are in for a treat. I met Sana and Ribat, and for those of you that know me, I have a straightforward personality. I heard them pitch, and they were raising $500,000. And they did a due diligence where we're asking a lot of questions, and I actually shut up, which is really rare. So when the due diligence was over, I actually got on the phone to them, and they'll recall. But here's the message I want to say. I said, listen, I have a good friend of mine who's in your space, and I would love for you to meet him. Right in your space could be a great strategy, and kudos to them. They said, Frank, we're not ready. And I got a little pissed, to be quite honest, because I'm always ready. But I'll tell you what, they were not ready. They were going to meet with the biggest player in their space, and they wanted to make sure that they had everything in order before they went and had that meeting. And I went down to that meeting with Angelo Del Duca, my mentor, the two of them, and they blew it out of the water. We backed out. They had a couple of other meetings with the CEO and the president of this world's largest rewards player. So phenomenal people, some of my favorite people, and I've been blessed because they also inspire me to get up every morning. I live for guys like this, and I mean it. You give them advice, they really take it, and they're very passionate about what they do. And wait until you hear what I read their story. So this is what we promised you today. Ribat and Sana started their journey with $5 in 5 days as part of an entrepreneurship challenge. It gave them an idea to take their love of local and build a hyper-local marketplace for neighborhood shops. Every marketplace has the classic chicken and egg problem. Which side do you sell to first? How do you get the one side to buy in and stay till it build the masses on the other hand? In this session, learn how entrepreneurs Sana and Ribat took $5 and broke the national record for the most money ever made in the challenge's history. And they even beat out universities like Harvard. Hear the story of their grit and passion as they turned their idea into a fledgling startup that is now valued in the millions. I'm also an investor, and I really love my investment so far. They're selling every moment to customers, investors, employees, and in this session they will share their unique approach to sales of building a two-sided marketplace and how it's gotten them so far. Learn how to build demand and supply in a market, no matter what product or service you offer. Okay? Here's a little bit on Sana and Ribat. Sana and Ribat are co-founders of tech startup Ribitt, basically a neighborhood rewards platform for local shops. Sana's background has been in design and sales. She won a full scholarship to come to Canada to Trent University. While pursuing her undergraduate degree, Sana worked in a high-powered sales position during her summer months, where she generated $250,000 in sales. It's not a surprise that the CEO of that company asked her to stay on and give up her future. She said no, so that's awesome. Ribat, her partner, came to Canada after winning a full scholarship as well, Trent University. This is where they met. In his first year at Trent, he was hired by one of Canada's top marketing girls, Chris Lang, to work for his agency. Guess what? He was also offered, said no. Thank you. During their time at university, Sana and Ribat broke the national record for the most money made in an entrepreneurial competition called the $5 Challenge. The success of this competition made them realize their mutual passion for business and technology, and validated the fact that are the power team that they can achieve anything together. After graduating from university, they launched Ribitt with the mission to make local the new global. Please, all the way from Peterborough, Sana and Ribat. By the way, I've never seen it without a toque, so this is just part of the...
I have a head coach.
Okay, there's one mic, so...
We'll be loud.
Okay, yeah. Can you guys hear us at the back?
Can everyone hear us?
Okay,
Okay,
so
perfect.
maybe then I'll pass this back to you so that I'm not... Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Ribat.
And I'm Sana. We're super excited to be here. Thank you so much. Frank has kind of given a great introduction. Both Ribat and I came as international students to Canada in 2012. I've had a design background. Ribat has always had a passion for technology, and we were always interested in seeing, okay, if we could leverage our skills to work together. And so when we were thinking about coming here and talking to you guys about sales, we thought we could tell you CRMs, we could tell you processes, we could tell you to stay organized, and all that stuff that you could Google and figure it out. But I think the one thing that has always been consistent in our journey has been being genuine during sales, building relationships, and before even getting your first customer, what did it take to make that product saleable? Or what was it that we needed to do before sales could even begin? And so we'll tell you our story, and kind of through that you'll see how this has been the same theme that's happened over and over again.
So we'll tell you how this story began. Not many people know this part of the story, but when we were at Trent, a bunch of our friends, we decided to go for a trip to Chicago. And so Sana and I were also part of the troop, and it was quite an exciting time. It was reading break, and we went to Chicago. And I had a backpack with me that had my MacBook. Sana wasn't carrying her stuff, so she gave me her MacBook to carry. I had my passport and $1,000 US. And what happened was we got up from the airport, we took the Chicago subway, and we're getting to the station where we needed to get off. And I had just taken off my backpack on the seat, and I was just resting myself. And then when when it was time for us to get off, I ran out of the door, and I was like, wait, why is my why do I feel lighter? Like, am I missing something? And I looked at Sana and I was like, do we have everything? And then right when we realized that the bag was still inside the subway, the doors closed. And that was the last time I saw Sana's MacBook, my computer, and my passport and $1,000 US all gone. And so we tried calling the lost and found. There were 6 lost and founds in the Chicago subway at different ends, and we called each one of them every day. So it was a horrible 5-day trip for me, and I didn't have a passport to come back. So yeah, being an international student, not on a Canadian passport, and coming back to Canada was a whole other story. We'll keep it for another day. But we got back to Canada, and Sana had 30 cents in her bank account, and I had 17 cents in my bank account. And we were 2 broke students with no money at hand. And then this competition came up, which was the $5 challenge. And this is a competition that takes place across universities in North America. And what the rules of the competition is, they give you $5 in seed money, and you can only use this $5. And you have 5 days to use those $5 and run a business. And at the end of the 5 days, the team that makes the most money wins the competition. So Sana and I had been thinking about different business ideas. We were like, hey, we could be good business partners. And we said, you know what? This would be a good time to make some money, and at the same time test out if we are good business partners. And so not many people know this, but we sat there and we said, okay, before we even go and attempt this challenge, let's figure out how much money we're going to make out of it. And it sounds very unconventional, but Sana and I have always been people who first set a goal and then say, we're going to hit this goal no matter what. And so we sat there and we calculated the cost of 2 MacBooks, renewing my passport, and $1,000 US, and we realized that we need roughly $6,000 to make up for the loss in Chicago and have some money to pay off our bills. So we locked this number, $6,000 is what we're going to make with this $5 challenge. And no one believed us. Everyone was like, yeah, you guys, $6,000 from $5, not happening. And they were right, because if you look at the challenge's history, the most money that was ever made in this competition was $1,500 at Stanford University. And at Trent University, people made $50, $100 using their $5. So that's what we were fighting against. And so we'll tell you what going in, and they give you the $5 in an envelope, and they explain to you the rules of the competition. And then you have a networking session, and the competition starts. And it begins on a Monday afternoon and ends on Friday at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, around that time. Yeah. And then you all go and present what ideas you have and how much money you made, etc. So Sana and I went and got our $5. And then here's where things started. We started differentiating ourselves from the rest of the crowd. So we had about 15 teams participating, and so everybody was given their $5, and people started networking and meeting people and all that. And Sana and I said, the competition just started, let's go. So we left, and before that we sat down and we said, what are we going to do with our $5? And so a lot of our friends went and with their $5 started selling popcorn and lemonade and going to the supermarket and getting cookie dough and doing all kinds of fun stuff that they could do. It was only $5, right? And so we sat there and we said, you know what, it's only 5 days. We cannot be selling our time. We need to create something of value to be able to get that kind of money. So during that time, Sana and I, when we came to Canada, we fell in love with these local shops. You know, the local restaurants, the coffee shops, going to the hair salon. And all our friends were always confused by the fact that we loved a local shop over McDonald's or Starbucks, because their perception was that as international students, we would be attracted to the big box, the big brand names. And for us, it was about the community and understanding, getting a flavor for what Canada was all about. And so we really loved being part of the local businesses there. So when the competition came about, we said, why don't we create some value for the local businesses in the Peterborough community? And so with our $5, what we did was we went to the print shop and got a pocket-sized coupon booklet made out with sample deals from different local shops. And the reason why we went with the pocket-sized coupon booklet was because that's the size the $5 could afford. Looking back, now it looks like a brilliant idea because you could keep it in your pocket and open it and get all the deals. But the reality is we printed that size because that's what we could get with $5. So with that print book at hand, Monday evening, we went out to these local shops. And the 3 things that Sana mentioned of being genuine, we had no sales script. We had no clue on what we were doing. All we went in was telling them a story. We went and said, hey, we're doing this competition, and this is a book of deals that we would love you as a local business to participate in. And the cost for participating in this booklet is $150. And we promise to hand distribute these booklets on campus for people to use. And it's a good way for you to get traffic to your shop. And then we weren't sure if this was a unique, if this was as unique to get us the money we needed. So what we did was we powered each coupon with a QR code, and the business could tell us what this QR code should link to. So it could link to their website, it could link to their Facebook page, basically any page on the internet that they wanted. So each coupon on the booklet had a QR code as well. So it was just a value add on top, and that kind of got them excited. So on the first day, we signed up. So the first 5 hours is really everything, because we went in and signed up one shop at a time, convincing them. So at the end of Monday, we had about 6 to 7 shops at $150 signed up, and we're feeling pretty good about it. And so the next day we continued, and this in between, we had classes, we had jobs. Both of us were working full time. And our professors were getting upset that we were not showing up in class. And we had a scholarship to maintain because our entire international tuition was being funded by the scholarship. So it was a pretty tough time, but we worked around the clock, no sleep. And so Sana would go and sell merchants. I would come back. She would give me all the copy and the design work that was needed to design the coupons. I would make the coupons. She would send it back to the merchant to get them proofread, and then they would pay us the money. And then we realized we're actually running a business, because the merchants would be like, do you have a receipt for this? So then we went to the dollar store, bought a booklet, and started issuing receipts to them. And then we were like, oh, this is real business. And then they were like, do you have an HST number? And they were asking, and we were like, this is a school project. This is all we can do now. And so now fast forward to Friday. We have made $4,000. It's the last day of the competition. And I called Sana up, and I said, Sana, I don't think we need to work anymore, because I think we won this competition. And the reason why I say this is because I can feel the heartbeat in my ears, because I have not slept. And I'm like wired. I cannot process information. Everything is blurry. And I called Sana up, and I'm saying, Sana, I don't think we need to work anymore. I'm pretty sure we won this competition. And the two things that Sana said that is the bedrock of our company today. And she said, we are going to continue because there are two reasons. First, we said we're going to make $6,000. So if we don't achieve it today, it's going to set the precedent for what we're going to do tomorrow. That was one. And second, she said, this is a promise that you and I have made to each other. So if we're going to become good business partners, we have to hold each other accountable. So we're not stopping until we get to $6,000. So I have no option. So now I'm not only I'm tired, but I'm thinking, wow, we have to hit that $6,000 number. So on Friday morning, we both get out, and we're saying, every business that we sign up, we're going to call each other and let us know. So we went, and we kept, every time we signed up a business, we'd call them and say the merchant said yes. And so we were counting how much dollars we had. And by 2 o'clock of the competition's closing, we had signed up 43 local merchants in the downtown area at $150 each. And Sana was still not sure if we won the competition. In my head, I was pretty sure that we won the competition. So we went to the closing ceremony of this event. There were 15 teams. And we were the last team to go on stage. And so before that, we had a chance to see all the ideas, and people had worked tremendously hard to get their ideas up and rolling. It's only $5 in a limited time, so people are really, really innovative. Like there was one student who had like a balloon on his face, and you could punch him and pay $2. People learned all extremes to get their ideas. And so the 14 teams that were participating, the highest dollar amount that they had made was a little over $100. So it was pretty embarrassing to go up on stage and say we made $6,300. Awesome. So we did that, and after a while, So we did the competition, felt good about it. It was a good testament for us to see how Sana and I worked together as a team, and we made some money. We had to give only 10% away to charity, so the remaining 90% was with us. It helped us pay off our bills, and it was a great success. And then we forgot about it. And what happened during that time was the next day we heard the Trent press office called us, media office called us, and they said, you guys broke the North American record for the most money ever made in this competition's history. So we got some press, and it was a pretty good moment for us, and it was a good validation for our team. But here's what happened next.
Yeah. God, he's much funnier than I am. That now. Yeah, it might be. But I mean, I think, so there was all that press, and it was fun, and it was exciting, and Ribat and I were like, okay, you know what, we're onto something, we can work well together. And so we started brainstorming all sorts of ideas. And we're like, okay, we'll create a video app or something. And while we were doing all of this, we had those same business, every time we'd walk into a business that had participated in that coupon booklet, they said, hey, when are you going to do this again? This was the best $150 I've ever spent. And so we said, okay, that sounds good. And then we'd go to school, and all the professors were like, hey, when are you guys going to do this? Like, you should be rolling this out to all these different cities. And so it was this feedback that we kept getting, and we were like, okay, maybe we're not even noticing the one problem that is in front of us. Like, maybe there is an actual disconnect between local shops and people in the community who want to go and shop there. But then we said, okay, but we're really into technology, and we don't want to do anything to do with paper or coupons. So we said, okay, we got to think slightly different. So we sat together and said, why don't we digitize the exact same idea that we had in a coupon booklet, but make it an app? So people could walk into a shop, get a 10% discount, and walk out, and everything would be done. So it was a great idea, and it was easy, and we had a lot of people said, yeah, use it. But we said, we both are broke, and we have no money. So back to always our story is we don't have money. So at this point, we're like, okay, what are we going to do? Where are we going to get the money from? And we said, well, there are people who said that they want to participate, and they've been asking us for this platform. Why don't we go back to our businesses and tell them to sign up with us, and we'll be able to crowdsource the funding for our app development. So we said, okay, but we don't know how to develop. So neither of us are developers, both business and marketing. So we put our marketing hats on, and we designed a screenshot of an app. So like Ashley just designed it, nothing's functional. We hotspotted a few different things, so if you touch it, it looked like it went to another page, but it didn't. So we went to all these shops and said, hey, you know, we're launching this in the summer, and we want you to sign up, but we want you to pay upfront for 12 months. And so most businesses said, yeah, okay, that sounds good. And then some businesses said, well, what if you never launch? Like, what happens to my money? And Ribat's that's very bold. And he was like, well, we'll give you your money back. We promise you, if we don't launch, we will give you your money back.
Didn't have a clue on how we're going to do that.
Something will work. And so and at the end of it, we had raised about $25,000 from businesses who had paid up front for a whole year, and that's how we developed our first version of the platform. Yeah. We launched, and everyone was happy, so Ribat did not have to do any side jobs to pay them back. Everything was good. And once we launched, we started to realize, okay, there's an actual opportunity. Now we're running a business, and that's when you start to see problems, and you see what's working, what's not working. You're no longer supporting just another university student or a project. People want deliverables. People want numbers. They paid up front for a whole year. And so the opportunity for us was to start looking at what's actually going to create value. And this was a great business to run in a small city and then take it to another city, and it would make a great lifestyle business. But we always had the big dream to make the next big startup. And so we said, okay, how do we make what we do right now scalable? How can we create a model where sales is not literally going to be knocking on every door and making sure that that business, I have to convince them to pay us up front to be able to fund to be able to create value for them after a real scalable business. And that's what brought us to where we are now. So Ribitt is a rewards platform. We do nothing with coupons anymore. Ribitt rewards people for shopping at independent stores. And think about something like PC Optimum or Air Miles, but at a hyper-local level for mom and pop shops. So if I want to go buy my coffee, or I want to go get a haircut, or I want to buy a gift for a friend, I can pay through the app and collect points. all these points become dollars that I can re-spend at any of the participating shops. And the reason why we came up with this was because when we're looking at Ribitt in its form as coupons, it was great, but it was still, the value of why people liked that platform was not coupons. It was because they had all these deals on one platform. And we realized that independent local shops alone do not have the same power that someone who, like a larger retailer like Starbucks has. When you download the Starbucks app, you've got access to 2,500 different locations that you can collect points at. For a mom and pop shop, it's buy 10 coffees and get the 11th free. So we said, how can we bring that same kind of value to those independent merchants? And then that's how we pivoted to where we are now.
Yeah, so a key nugget for us from that process was the fact that because we kept getting feedback, positive feedback on the coupon booklet and the first version of the app, what we really started understanding is this is not the first time this was done. So why did people keep coming back and giving us good feedback? And so one of the things we realized was it was a lot of local businesses on just 2 streets in the Peterborough downtown area. So it's very compelling for somebody who opened the booklet and said, oh, I go to all these shops. It's just not one-off. And that was what stayed with us throughout the journey. And we said, if all of these local shops came together on a single solution where they were connected with each other, it would create more value for the people who are interacting with these businesses. So that's how, and giving people rewards or an incentive for shopping at a store was a way to do that. And making it a collective rewards program brought all these local merchants together. And all of a sudden, they're not one small business. They're a group of community of local shops that are working together. And now at scale, you can imagine there are 27 million local shops in North America. They could become the biggest player than any of the bigger box stores. And so that's the vision that we launched Ribitt with. So I'll tell you a little bit of the sales piece again here. So we conceptualized Ribitt as an iteration of the coupon booklet, then the first version of the app, and we said this is the big idea that's going to scale across cities in North America. Now, like Frank mentioned, to get this rolling, this was not going to be another $25,000 raised and develop an app. This had to be, the infrastructure had to be built very differently. Something that was scalable and repeatable and can grow immensely fast as the masses come in. So we budgeted $500,000 as our first raise. And the raise was not on this product. The raise was on the success of a previous product and the promise to roll this out. So if you think about the traditional funding landscape, you're asking an investor to basically invest in a new idea that's not proven. You have some experience in this space, but you don't have any traction on the platform that you're promising them to build, which was our #1 challenge. But we knew without the money, we would not spend $5,000. We cannot spend small buckets of money to do this at the scale that we wanted to do. So we had to raise $500,000. So here comes the story of how we got our first investor. When I got to Canada, as Frank mentioned, I was lucky to be hired by one of the largest marketing agencies in Canada. They build partnerships between very big brands, so they usually stay behind, so you don't see them. They're not a consumer-facing company. But the person who ran the marketing agency hired me, and his name is Chris Line. He's been nominated for Canada's Marketing Hall of Fame, so very reputable individual. And so when he hired me, I knew nothing about Canadian business and no experience about what the landscape was. And I don't know why he hired me, to be honest. And so I was interning with him while I was at university. And this is where the real sell comes in play. So all my friends who were with me during university just felt like I was being abused by this individual, in the sense that I was always expected to work all the time. He would call me at 12 a.m. at night, 11 p.m. at night, and say, Ribat, you got to do this. We have a presentation tomorrow to make. Can you put this together? He would call me over weekends, and all my friends and everybody around me felt like I was being naive and not being understanding of the situation. He was like, he's your employer. You need to have some boundaries around what's expected of you. And I didn't have a job contract with him either. I was paid, but for me, it was not about the job. It was about an opportunity. Somebody took a bet on me, and I need to be there and make myself available to this person. So, and not many people think that way. And so it was very frustrating to be with a peer group that was constantly telling me, hey, that's not the right way to do it. Are you sure this person is treating you the right way? And for me, it was a whole different relationship. And how that came into, it always comes full circle, and how it came into being was, so when we started raising money, Chris had offered me a full-time job, similar to Sana's story after graduation, and I said, Chris, I'm not going to work, I feel like there is something here and I want to build this business. He was very disappointed, but he said, I'll help you regardless. I can introduce you to a group of investors, et cetera, et cetera. So he introduced me to a whole lot of people, and I met all of them, and everybody asked, how much is Chris investing? And I said, well, Chris never made me a promise to invest. And so the conversation would die out. And so Chris one day, I met Chris one day and he said, how many investors have you got to date? I said, Chris, 0, because they all are asking me, how much are you putting in? And then he said, well, I don't know anything about startup investing. Tech is not my space. I know nothing. And so he said, what happens if you don't raise money? What happens? And so I told Chris, Chris, one way or the other, someone's going to invest. But if no one invests in the next few months, I'm going to promise them the $100,000 back if this business does not work. And he's like, how are you going to do that? You don't have the money. And I said, well, I'm young. I'll work for them. I don't know. I'll work for them. I'll pay them. It's $100,000. One way or the other, I'll figure it out. And so when I said that, Chris was very quiet for a moment. And he said, I've never invested in anybody other than myself. But I think if anybody ever can make something out of my money, it would probably be you two. And so he wrote the first $100,000 check that day. And he said, I don't want anything out of it. Like, if it works, it works. You don't have to return it back to me. It's an investment. And that got us our first check. So, the cycle comes full, right? And then, still today, my friends don't get it. They're like, I don't understand why you. But for me, that's exactly why that investment for 3 years was necessary. Because I had earned the trust and respect of that individual. And so he was not betting on the company or the idea. He was betting on Sana and myself. So that got the first $100,000. And that once you get the first check, the other checks are relatively easier. And the last 50 is also hard, because Frank and a couple of the investors helped us close the last little bit. But that's what got us rolling, and then from that on, the story became much, much easier. Yeah. So a little bit of where we are today. So with the 500,000, the promise that we made to our investors was this. We're going to launch this product, we're going to prove traction, and we're going to validate that this is a model that works. So, and here's something that's really important. So initially, we noticed that a lot of companies in this space, what they would do is they launch in the market and they would sign up a lot of merchants. But think about it from a very use case scenario. If you're somebody who's living in Whitby, and we were targeting this app to you, and we said, hey, you can download this app, and you can get points at all these participating local shops. And you said, great, I love this concept. And you download the app, and you open the app, and you saw only 2 businesses in Whitby. It's not compelling to you. We may have merchants all across Toronto, but you live in Whitby, and you don't necessarily go to Toronto. So now it's a mismatch where the merchant has signed up, but the traffic is being targeted at other places who isn't compelled to go to these shops. So early on, we had to make a choice that we're not going to scale Ribitt instantly overnight, and our investors have to be patient with us along the way. And we have to prove this model neighborhood by neighborhood. And why that was important was we'd start small, but we'd make a very, very sticky product. We'd get a lot of merchants signed up in a very close, dense area, and get users around that area to participate in the program. Once these merchants and the users are interacting, and we now know that this model works, we'll be replicating it to the next neighborhood, and then the next. And then we're going to go to a big VC and say, we've proven this model, we now need $10 million to expand this across Canada. So that's something that we had agreed on early on, that we're not going to, in the interest of earning quick revenue and generating profit, we will not jeopardize the longevity of what this business could become eventually. Because what happens in this space is a lot of companies will roll out, they'll spend $2-3 million in capturing a market, but then they're not building traction, so they die out and fizzle out eventually. And that's something that we did not want to do. So with our $500,000, we hired a team. We're a team of 5 people at the present, going on to 10. But the core team was hired after we closed the $500,000. And the goal, the vision, and the promise to investors was threefold. We're going to launch the product. We're going to prove traction in Peterborough, but also launch in a small segment in Toronto to show that this is something that can stick in a bigger city as well. And then we're going to move on to the next step. So currently we're in 3 neighborhoods. We're in Peterborough and Roncesvalles and the Junction neighborhoods in Toronto. We have about 100 plus merchants that are participating on it. And the cool thing about it is not a single merchant has dropped off the platform since sign up. We have a 100% retention rate of the merchants that we've signed up. And we haven't put the user numbers, but about 2,000 users who are living in the Roncesvalles and Junction neighborhood are active users of the platform. We have generated $100,000 in sales. So, and this is just to prove that this is a model that can work in dense neighborhoods. Now we're going on a 10x growth sprint. So now that we've proven the model, we're saying, okay, now we need to show to the next VC who's coming in that this is something that works, but can also scale rapidly. So for the next few months, we're going on a 10x growth target. So we're opening Parkdale, Rodale, Junction Triangle, Bloor West Village, and the Kingsway neighborhoods. Again, notice that these are adjacent neighborhoods to our initial Roncesvalles and the Junction neighborhoods. And why we're going adjacent is because there's a cross-pollination between the neighborhoods that helps us scale. So for example, when you're approaching merchants in these neighborhoods, there are 2 things that have happened. The merchants here know some of the merchants in these neighborhoods. So they're giving us word of mouth. They're saying, yeah, go talk to that merchant, I know them. So when we walk in and sign them up, the sell is much easier because now we're coming from a positive word of mouth. And the merchants who are already here have somehow heard about us. They've seen talk about it, so the sell is easier. So the adjacent neighborhood to neighborhood strategy is a very key piece of our sales process. And then once we launch in any neighborhood, we then start targeting to users because users have to come in and use it at the merchant's place and keep collecting points so the merchant knows that there's value being created. And at the end, they're increasing their bottom line by getting their existing customers to spend more while attracting new customers to their door. And so the way we do that is every shop has a touch point where the users can sign up, and we have a stack of promo codes that the user can use, and each promo code gives the users $5 in points so that they can start shopping locally. So every merchant has a checkout point, and every merchant is a user acquisition point for us. And then the merchant is also pushing it because the user gets $5. So it's a win-win for the merchant also to push the program.
Yeah, I think I guess that's probably one of the biggest things when it comes to a 2-sided marketplace. You've got the supply side, which in our case is the businesses, and the users, which are people who will come in and actually make purchases at these places. So when we were building this marketplace, something that was super important to us was looking at, okay, what would be any reason that a business would say, look, I don't think I want to sign up. And I'm going to get into a few details here because I think this was probably, now that we've gotten to a point where we have some sales process and figuring that I think this is something would probably work for everyone who's making any kind of a sale. When you go in and someone says, hey, you know what, it costs too much, or I don't know if there's a demand for this. There were like 2 or 3 questions that when you keep hearing, you're like, okay, these are the things I have to make sure that I'm going to solve. And so everyone's favorite question is, how much is this going to cost me? And so when Ribat and I first started off with the second version of Ribitt, which was going and getting coupons, we'd done a monthly subscription fee. But now when we launched Ribitt as in terms of the rewards platform, we said we have to remove this barrier to entry. So people should be, any merchant could sign up for free. When businesses ask us, what does this cost? We tell them, well, it's completely free for you to join. It's when we drive traffic to your store, we take a percentage. And so to them, it's like, oh, okay, awesome. So it's a win-win scenario. If it doesn't work, I don't lose anything. And if you drive traction to me, that's when I'm going to be giving a small percentage, which is fair. So that was one of the main things that was, okay, how do we park that one? And it was, okay, is there actually any traction? I think that goes back to exactly what Ribat was saying, was really thinking about, do we want to say that, hey, we got 150 merchants in 1 week? Because that's possible. We can hire a bunch of salespeople who pick up the phone, cold call all day, and get us those 150 merchants across Toronto. But would we actually be able to drive any value to them? Probably not. And so what would suffer would be a 100% retention rate. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things. Having sales is great, but then being able to keep them on as customers who are happy and who will make those referrals and say, yeah, this thing actually really works. Because that was something that was super important. So we picked up going in a small neighborhood. And I don't know if it was a strategy that we thought through so much. but rather that we were in Peterborough and it was a small community. And so we'd seen the value of bringing on local merchants in 2 streets and then seeing how all the users there started to use it and see value in that. And then took that same concept and said, okay, if we're going to take this to a larger community, not look at it like Toronto is huge or, you know, that's daunting. It was like, okay, let's take that exact same concept and replicate that in Toronto because it's no different. People are people, they like the same thing, they feel the same way, we purchase the same way, and so we started breaking down Toronto into smaller neighborhoods, and that's when we launched Roncesvalles Junction, and like Ribat was saying, kind of go from one neighborhood to another. Because as part of doing that merchant side and the user side, merchants are actually a bit easier to bring on because they're not paying a fee, we've created value for them. It's actually convincing the other side, hey, there's so much value for you to use this platform. And so it made sense that when we bring on users, we can leverage our existing users when they go to a new market so that we can drive traction to our merchants in the newer market much faster. And so that was something that has really been working, and we have now put it in a sense where we can say, you know what, this is our actual process. This is how we roll out in a neighborhood. But looking back, that's not how any of it started. We didn't think about, hey, what's going to make the best presentation? What's going to be the easiest way to sell or the best way to sell, practices, CRM? And I think if we had thought about all of those things, we'd never do it. We probably would never have had the $5 challenge because it was our naivety. It was just the fact that we're like, okay, well, sure, $6,000. Yeah, we can do it. Let's go do it. We don't have money to build an app. Okay, let's go ask them. And it was about this concept of if we don't do it, we won't know. And along the way, now we've been able to create a process where we're saying, okay, we can hire anybody, but we can give this process to and say, okay, say this because we know it works. This is how you want to represent yourself. We've given them a way that now anyone who can join the team can get the same kind of results that Ribat and I did when we first launched. But I think it always goes back to like the first part that we were saying, is that earlier we didn't have a sales script, today we do. Before we didn't have processes, now we do. But the one thing that stayed consistent are these 3 things, and it'll, I think, always be the bedrock of having any kind of a conversation or any kind of a sale. Being ourselves, being genuine, I think like that goes so far. I always give this example when we go to a store where, like, let's say I'm an Old Navy, you want to buy something. And someone comes to you and says, hey, can I help you with something? I probably really do need help. But I'm like, no, I'm good, thank you so much. Because it's just this concept of, I don't want to be sold on something. And I think that's probably the biggest misconception. Like, so many people apply for jobs with us who say, oh, this is a sales position, but I don't have sales experience. And I think that's actually the biggest part of, you just need to be able to be yourself and have a conversation and be genuine. And I think that's always worked for us. We've always been ourselves. We're selling ourselves to you right now. We've sold ourselves to every investor who's believed in us, our customers, our users. And it's just about the fact that it's who we are. And that when we brought on our first employee, actually, it was a sell. Like, no one else believes, okay, this is where you're going to go. So we're going to pay you very little. We're going to make you work very hard. Please believe us. This is going to be a huge thing. And just throughout the time, it was about having them trust us. And I think trust only comes when you show who you are and you're being genuine as yourself. So I think that's always been super important to us. Relationships, totally key. Ribat has, like, through his story, I think that definitely is a story that we tell all the time. We say it to everybody. I think we don't realize that relationships are not something that you come and you have a conversation with someone. Doesn't mean that you have to go out for coffee with them every night or be able to be available for them all the time. But it's about the fact to keep that upkeep, or in that time when I'm having a conversation, making that person feel valued. And like when we bring on a merchant, the merchants will sit down with us and be like, oh, I'm not buying with you, I'm not buying from you because, or I'm not signing up because, I'm just signing up because I think you're really great. Like, you're awesome and I trust you, and I think that what you're saying makes sense. Like, it's a cool product, but you're awesome. And I think that goes a long way because that person who just built a relationship, and now based on that trust and relationship, they're going to open up doors for us to a bunch of other merchants. So that's, I think, been like a very big part of all of it. And sales starts long before you talk to your first customer. I shouldn't let you say this one.
Yeah, I think this is really important for us, right? It was right from the get-go. We realized that when you're selling to somebody, the sell is not when the salesperson walks into the merchant's door in our situation. The sales started long back the day we realized that orange would be the color of Ribitt, right? And so every single step that you're making, your presentation, your brand, the way you position yourself, everything is leading up to that sale. And all you're doing in that sale, and you're sharing that entire journey in 2 minutes, and getting somebody to move from their point of view to your point of view. And that should not be the worrisome part, or that should not be the part that requires the most work. What should require the most work is leading up to that. So when the salesperson is walking to the merchant, it's a no-brainer. They're like, wow, why wouldn't I sign up for this? And that's exactly been our motto. And until we get to that stage, patience investors, until we get to that stage, we'll not scale Ribitt rapidly. And this is something that's core of our product, because the day we start scaling, we know it's going to happen in a very fast manner. But we need to fuel that engine, that when that happens, it's not breaking midpoint, or it's not like going slow and then it dips again. And we don't want that to happen. We want to be dead sure that the model that we've built is so replicatable that overnight we can open in communities across North America. But that's really important to us. But the early foundation is going to take time. So we have had to learn a lot of these. Each time the sales process gets faster or doesn't happen faster, we look back and say, what's not, we don't ask ourselves what's not working in the sales script. We ask ourselves what's not working with the product. What's not working with the company? How is our positioning not working? Is there any value that still needs to be added to the product that the merchant is not getting? And so for us, those things are really important. And then the last part is the sell. So if you have an amazing product and something that brings value, and you're able to communicate that value to people, it should be a no-brainer for them. And one of the things we believe is whenever we get feedback that's saying, I will sign up only if you do this, we're like, let's go and do that. And if we hear it from 10 different people at the same time, we know it's something that we work on. And this is something that some of our investors have taught us. You get feedback, just come back and work on that feedback and go back to them. And that's the only way you can win this space. And so we have done that with investors as well. So whenever someone says, if you hit this goal at this time, I'll write you a check. And so we'll be like, sure, we'll go back and we'll work on it. And then we can come back and say, we have done that. And now what, right? And so that's been a process that works for us all the time. So remember, sales doesn't start when you're talking to the customer. It already started a long time ago. We've tried to keep it short so that we can answer questions and have a discussion. But here's a small gift from you. It's also a strategy for getting you signed up on the app. If you download the app, this is the icon just for you to see. It's on the App Store and Google Play. If you add this promo code, you'll get $5 from us. We look forward to you trying out Ribitt at the stores that are participating. And also, Carrie is there. We'll be launching in Whitby soon. So hopefully you guys can give it a try. And this is the promo code that we use to get $5,000 points. 5,000 points from us, which is $5.
Again, giving out money you don't have. Awesome.
Yes.
Wow, this is amazing. So first of all, thank you for the $5,000. And secondly, I actually want to know, because I think this is amazing. So our company is based in Ajax, and in terms of the population, because we serve the Black community, 32,000 have. My question is, when you come to Ajax, because I see something really special happening here and could happen for those in Ajax.
Yeah,
For sure.
definitely. It's definitely something that we're always working with, looking at different communities. So actually that was how we are working with Whitby. It's not part of one of the other neighborhoods that we're expanding to, but we're working with the BIA so that we can together roll out in Whitby. And if that works really well, we're probably going to do the rest of Durham and come to all the different neighborhoods.
And the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Ajax Bigger Board of Trade.
So we're in conversation with the Ajax Pickering Board of Trade. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's
definitely happy to connect with you and see. Yeah. We have two approaches now. So the first approach is we're already in Toronto in 2 neighborhoods. So from an investor perspective, we have to prove rapid scalability of the model. So we're focusing on going to the adjacent neighborhoods, but at the same time, we're saying what's the long-term play here? Are there community organizations that want Ribitt to be in their communities, and we've been approached by multiple BIAs and Chamber of Commerces from across Canada to take it there, but we're taking it slow to prove the model. But having said that, with Whitby starting up, we're happy to look
if
into
there's any
how
questions,
can we
we can always
expand.
had this question here.
So I can see why, and I think everyone in this room can see why Chris took a fly on you that first part-time job. You may not know why he hired you the first time, but I'm sure we can see it. You mentioned that you guys didn't want to go door to door anymore. We have a lot of people that when we talk to business owners that are starting out, they want to use social media for every lead generation tactic there is, but it still sounds like you guys are going door to door to sign on, as well as working with BIAs. Can you talk a bit about how you acquire customers?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great point, actually. So when we launched in a neighborhood, what we started with is grassroots level. So we still do have a lot of the early businesses that come on. Lead generation is actually going into merchants, talking to them one-on-one, finding blogs that have spoken about different merchants, getting lists from there. So it is a lot of the groundwork that's done still in person and that physical aspect. And I think that's important because it allows you to bring on the early adopters and build a level of trust, at which then we can start moving to strategies like social media. So what we've started to find actually is when we open up in Roncesvalles, we brought on the first 15, 20 businesses just by going and knocking on doors and getting our first early merchants on and started marketing to users and starting to build that neighborhood. But simultaneously, we built in a referral program so all these merchants who now are seeing value could also invite other merchants in the neighborhood that they know. And each of them would get a certain amount of dollars off their fees that they would be paying us. So to them, it was a win-win scenario. It's like, awesome, this second merchant's going to come on. When they bring on their users, I will get more traffic, and also I'm going to be saving a little bit on my percentage. In addition to that, then of course, there's social media and a lot of those other things that kind of adds the other sense of lots of other avenues to build a merchant lead list. But I would say definitely even now it still is about starting small and then building it to a point where it's scalable. Because of course the goal one day is that we've built the platform such that any merchant can find us, sign up, and start attracting customers. So it is built as an open platform. But we do understand the value of having driving traction to our merchants when they first come on, so we still do the grassroots as well.
Yeah, so what we see is eventually the going door to door will probably happen only in new markets. Like if say we open in New York, and so we'll start grassroots level, but then once as Toronto expands, we see the referral program and the inbound merchant signing up on their own would happen faster, and then the sales team will slowly move to just growing in new markets where we have to make a fresh start.
Really smart model.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, it makes me feel really excited because I feel like we live in this world where some of these bigger companies are, they have rewards programs.
Yes.
So we make decisions as consumers to shop there because from a financial perspective, okay, I can get points. So when you say that you're giving this collective power to small business, it's like, oh, I get so excited. And I think it's such a great model because you're empowering these smaller collective businesses to become competitive with those bigger box stores. So yay, like I just feel like
Thank you.
It's not a question. I feel like, ooh.
Thank you.
Yeah, we love that.
I just wanted to confirm, is this only for like brick and mortar organizations, or are you also for online
Yes.
around the?
So very, very good question. Like with everything, we're following an iterative process. So currently we're only for physical retail. So you have to walk into a shop, you make a purchase with the app, you collect points, and that's how it goes. Having said that, in the pipeline, so many of the retail stores, for example, have Shopify stores. So they would want their customers who are shopping online to collect Ribitt points as well. So that's the next product update in terms of the pipeline. So definitely looking at a Shopify plugin where the retail stores who have an online presence could use our plugin, and so a customer could follow the checkout process while still collecting Ribitt points, but not there at the moment. Yeah.
Just wondering how you came up with the name.
Oh, that's a fun question. I love stories to tell. Okay, so we're doing our $5 challenge, and it was the last day, and we were like, okay, pretty sure we've won this competition, but we don't know what to call it. So we had a big board of the tackiest names you can think of, flip book, coupon book, all sorts of things, and we just couldn't settle on anything. And I used to call Ribat Ribitt just because you notice he can't stand. And so I was like, Ribbit, we can't come up with a name. And in my head, I was like, ooh, Ribbit sounds good. And I'm like, what about Ribbit? And he's like, that's horrible. Bad idea. We're not doing that. And I said, hold on. So we were in at Trent, and so we walked out of class, and I was like, hey, what do you think about the name Ribbit? He's like, oh, like that frog that hops around from place to place? And we're like, and then Ribat was listening to us, and like, oh, maybe. I mean, maybe it'll work. And it did, and it stuck, and we've gone back to revisit if we should change the name at every different iteration, and we never have, and now we're Ribbit.
So now when customers call me, I'm like, hi, I'm Ribat from Ribbit. Go ahead, you can go ahead.
Okay, so you made it sound like there was a lot of trial and error here. You guys just kind of went with the flow, figured it out along the way. Did you ever do any sort of formal business plan, any marketing strategies? Anything?
So this is something.
That's not what you told me when you asked for investment.
This is where.
Damn, I should have asked for that business.
Like we love our academic experience at Trent, but this is take it with a grain of salt. This is just Sana and my personal experience. When we were at Trent, when everyone heard about the $5 challenge, everyone pushed us to make a 15-page business plan, SWOT analysis, and all that. Anyways, and the thing is, if you look at Google it's a public company. They do not have a business plan because by the time, as a corporation, they get to make a business plan, things have already changed, and there is no point. So what we do is, whenever someone asks for a business plan, we know we're on a whole different wavelength. Because what we have is a pitch deck, and the pitch deck and a financial model that explains how this model is going to scale. And the pitch deck is a 10-slide document with as much text as you saw today that just explains what the model is and what the end vision is. Everything that the investor needs to know in a nugget. What's the overall exit strategy? How big do you see yourself in 5 years? What are the key challenges and how you're solving it? What's the model? What's the revenue model? Who are on the team? That's all we got. Along the way, we're figuring out things at the same time. Right? We had 10 different ideas on how we're going to acquire our first 1,000 users. By the time we launched, all of that were outside the window. Things that we did not think about, we're using today. So, we do brainstorming sessions, and like every day we'll hear from our investors, can you send me this plan? And we're like, it's on sticky notes everywhere. We have time, we'll put it together and give it to you.
I mean, I think that is something though. Like there is a balance of everything. Like if someone is looking to actually do a business model, we're not something that we say don't do. I mean, I always go to I don't know if you guys have heard the business model canvas. It's actually like a much shorter, it's a fun exercise to just kind of get the thoughts out. It does live on sticky notes, and I mean, I'm a big fan of sticky notes because of what Rat's saying. Just crumple, throw, and put the next one up is just much easier. More like a live sort of a feel, but we never went with like the traditional business plan. Definitely forecasting and financials are super important. Not to say that we don't take that very importantly. I mean, we are working with a lot of people's hard-earned money, and that is a huge responsibility. So being actually able to forecast and understand what the financials are right to the bottom of it is something that's very important. So more on financial statements than actual business plan. For sure.
So I think you guys have an amazing business partnership. I just want to say that right now, because I've been in business with my husband for about 9 years. And let me keep it real. This past weekend we had an overnight getaway for married couples. My husband said, I'm not showing up because I'm arguing with you. They paid their money. And he actually really didn't show up.
He's not living at home anymore. That's okay.
I'm looking for a different business partner. But my husband and I were very real. I don't think we're good business partners. I just think that we're good partners, not business partners. I actually want to ask you, what are the traits you should look for in a business partner, since I'm looking? And I think you guys have something amazing. So what are some traits that I should be looking for in a business partner?
Can I go first?
Yeah. Awesome. Good partner, for sure.
One of the things that really worked for us is, I remember when we were at university, we were in 2 different teams at a presentation, and a friend of ours walked up to us and said, it's so good you guys are not in the same team, because I don't know how you guys would work together. And we always like, why is that a question? And that's because we have very strong personalities, but when we are brainstorming, or are debating or arguing about ideas, we make sure our personal egos are not in the picture. Like, we will attack each other, and not physically, but we'll attack each other's views. Something that is very uncomfortable. We had an intern who was shivering when Sana and I had a brainstorming session because he was like, "Oh, my internship is gone from tomorrow," and he was shivering, and we're like, "Dude, it's fine. Like, this is just how we are every day." So when we are brainstorming, we let the best idea win, and that has to come from mutual. Like, the mutual ground has to be there. So a lot of people are like, "We don't know how you guys do it," and for us, it's like when we are in work mode. Everything goes out the door, and we are focusing on just the idea and what we're debating and making sure. Like, that's the number one. And I think, you want the other person to get you, and
Yeah,
that's.
I think like there's a huge part of a lot of that is respect and trust, right? Like, I respect that Ribat has got knowledge in areas that I do not. And so when he's making a decision or he's suggesting something, I'm like, okay, this is actually something that I know you know better than me. I have to trust him, even though I'm like, not sure. I kind of want to argue about it, but okay. And I think the same, it goes vice versa. You got to trust the other person. You got to know that it's not about, like he's saying, personal egos or anything. It's about no matter what we're doing, we've got a joint vision, and if we both believe in the same vision, we both have also came to realize that we've got very different ways of thinking and approaching things, but have the same common goal in mind. I think that's very important because you don't want someone who's exactly you, because you both would be doing one thing really well, but both would also be doing something not well, and so you want to kind of complement that. I'd say that's probably the biggest thing for us. Yeah. Hi.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Jody from Hire and Fire Kids. Question on stats. Do you have stats on your users? Their age, their gender?
Yeah, we do. I'm going to keep that a little bit more vague.
Okay.
That's okay. Would say millennials are our biggest users. Younger professionals use our platform a lot.
Do females cute a bit?
I would say it depends on which neighborhood, actually. So in Peterborough, yes, a little bit more females. In Toronto, you'd actually see it a lot more 50-50, and I think it makes sense because it's a younger demographic. Very, like, the neighborhoods we go into is super hipster and trendy, and it's like Pat League, everything's the same thing. Like, it all happens. So I think it's definitely depending on which neighborhood that you go into. Yeah, I hope that answers slightly what it is. But yeah, that would be the age demographic.
So, two things. Talk a little bit, if you could, about the wonderful thing about Durham, and I believe we're in a sharing, you're sharing everything, but sharing also, because I don't think that if it wasn't for certain individuals,
Yes.
like Eve up in Peterborough, you wouldn't be here. And
totally.
some of the people that believed in you. How did the ecosystem help you? Because what was cool is we invited them to the Spark Center to help the companies that came from Brazil. They came and shared, when you're pitching, here's what you should do, what you shouldn't do to raise money. So what you find is that as the young entrepreneurs are making it, they're coming back and they start giving back. So talk a little bit how the ecosystem helped you to get here today, because that's what I'm a big fan of.
Yeah.
And then part B, if you would, what did that meeting feel like, the biggest meeting that you had, where you met with the world's largest rewards player,
Yeah.
following up on what Annika was saying, where they told you that they love what you're doing?
Yeah.
And what did that feel like when you got a big corporation like that saying, wow, we've been trying to figure this out?
Yeah. So we'll answer the second part first because
Whatever you
that's. Frank introduced us to the largest rewards company in the world, a senior executive who knows Frank personally, and for a long time, Sana and I have identified this company as a prospective exit strategy for us in the future, maybe a partnership opportunity, etc., etc. They don't serve. No one serves the local space in a shared rewards program, so it's very important for us as an opportunity. And like Frank mentioned, when Frank first mentioned this to us, we didn't think we were ready. We did not want to show up at a meeting with a senior executive in a company and show them a piece of paper with a plan and say, this is what we're going to do. but it may be the greatest idea in the world. It's not executed. There is no evidence that it's working. So we wanted to be sure that we have a model enough to have a discussion. So we went with the idea of just getting feedback from investor. Frank was in the meeting. Angelo, I think, sitting back, was in the meeting as well with us. And so we're just sharing our story like we did today. And they were like, "Wow, this is a space that we've been very interested in," and they want to play in the space. That's what they said, and they've been trying. They've spent a lot of time in the last 4 or 5 years trying to understand if there is a market for hyper-local rewards program. And the feedback that they gave us is, you guys are validating that model. So we want to work with you. And we've had some 3-4 meetings now with them, and there's some exciting opportunities down the line. So that really felt exciting. But coming back to what Frank was saying, I think when we first started, when you have an idea, it's only in your mind, and then you have 2 founders, and then it's in their mind, and then you have to get people inside under your umbrella vision. And it wasn't easy to start with, but then you always have people who see the bigger picture, who see us and our ability to execute, and you need those early supporters because they can make or break the entire business. So when we got Chris as our first investor, we needed to fill in the remaining money. We met Eve, who is the executive director of Peterborough Angels. And so every person that we met in the early days really helped us to move things forward. And it was always being genuine and telling them the same story, but at the same time, the ecosystem really helped us to get to where we are today. Like every investor, every individual. And one thing that I think learned as a learning experience for us was when somebody says, "No, I'm not going to invest," or "I don't believe in this idea," or "I hear some critical feedback on why this is not going to work," that is not the end of that relationship, because people often come around. And if an investor, every investor or everybody in the ecosystem who's trying to support you has some kind of a viewpoint that may or may not be yours, but it's coming from their own experience of things. And so as long as you have mutual respect on that, I think is important. So we have had so many times when investors have walked out and they've walked back because in 6 months things have changed, or vice versa. Somebody who really believed in us, but then they were like, "Oh, I don't see it scaling," etc., etc. Yeah.
I know, that was Frank. Frank, when he first met us, said, "This is cool, but I don't know if you."
I don't know anything about it, but when it was validated by the biggest player, that's when I went in.
Yeah.
And I think that was amazing. Actually, part of what, when you asked about that question, the only thing I was thinking is, when we walked into that meeting, we were not selling that company. We were selling Frank. We needed Frank to invest. So our focus, it didn't feel like, it wasn't daunting or anything. We were there telling our story, and I think that's always worked for us.
We didn't expect anything out of it.
Yeah.
We're like, Frank wants to be an investor. If we can have the senior executive say, "This is a good idea," then Frank's going to come in. And I think, for us, like Frank mentioned, you may not use everybody's feedback right away, but it's important to take that feedback and keep it inside. And maybe some people people may not get that why you're not reacting to their feedback right away. Like when Frank mentioned to us, you have to have a loyalty expert in your team to validate the model, and we just weren't ready at that time. So yes, it caused a temporary disagreement between 2 individuals, but if you can prove it out in the long run, then it works. And then of course, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, but that's part of the game.
Cool.
First off, congratulations on your success. I think it's really great. We're partner here and I, we came all the way just to see you guys and hear your story. So
oh, nice, thank you.
Yeah, it was great. We have a question. You mentioned a lot about different strategies that you're doing to sort of grow the supply end of the business.
Yes.
What are some of the challenges you're experiencing communicating with the demand side, the customers, and scaling on that front?
Yeah. I think definitely, like I was saying, it's probably the harder side to build. People always think, okay, how are you going to get merchants? You'll get merchants because you're creating value. I think it's actually the harder side is getting users. And I think it's about truly creating value and communicating that the right way. And we've tried multiple different strategies, and some work and some don't. Everyone will say, oh, okay, great, do a social media campaign. But is that really the best thing to do? I think it's also about, sure, if we're using social media, how are we using it? Really targeting it to the neighborhood that we are, we're not going to target North York, even though people probably from North York may come to Roncesvalles, but we really target right around Roncesvalles. And bringing on customers who are like, okay, what's going to be our acquisition point? And so like Ribat was saying, each merchant for us has become an acquisition point. We don't have a brick and mortar store, people can't come in and get to know about us, but now every time they walk into a merchant that is a Ribitt participating merchant, they walk in, they see a Ribitt sign, it's some orange thing, they saw it on social media. Now when they walk in to pay for their purchase, they actually have a stand right there that says, hey, get $5 when you shop here and earn points around the neighborhood. So it's just a point, at each merchant we've created a point of acquisition, and we actually find that that is one of our stronger points of, probably the most return that we've gotten from acquisition is directly at those merchants.
I think the other thing I would add that is, so Sana is in charge of user acquisition on the platform. So what we've done is we've actually, initially when we launched Ribitt, it was let's get to 100 users and let's get these 100 people to make purchases. So it was all about messaging our friends on Facebook, calling people up and saying, hey, we just launched, try this platform, and you get some kind of traction going on. From there, like where we are now is we've looked at what is considered an active user on Ribitt, and how do we get to that user being an active user on Ribitt. So we realized that on average, if a user makes 2 transactions on Ribitt a month, they are an active user. This is just an internal metric that we came up with. So how do you get somebody to be an active user and make at least 2 purchases a month? Because if they make 1 purchase in a month, that's 30 days, right? Then maybe in the second month we've already lost them because they don't see the value of the platform anymore. So we looked at the entire funnel and we said, we're going to get first somebody to sign up on the app, first download the app, then become a member on the app, then add their credit card or debit card and make their first purchase. And then from the first purchase, they make their second purchase. And from their second purchase, they love the platform enough that they can refer somebody else on the platform. So that's the entire user acquisition funnel. And every step, there is a different way to get them from one to one. So for example, when we first launched, we're like, a lot of people are signing up, but people are not using it. Why aren't they using it? Like, well, and then we realized that, people were not adding their credit card, debit card information right away. So if you don't have that information added on the app right away, when you're at the point of purchase, you're like, I'll just pay with my card because this requires setup. This requires me to add my card first and all that. So we want to make sure that when somebody signs up, how can we get them to add their card information right away? So now when you open the app, and this goes back to designing the app in a way that the sell is easier, right? So we took that feedback and we went back to the app and we realized that when people sign up on the app, now when they click the pay button on the app, it does not tell them anything. It tells them, please add your card before you can start making purchases on Ribitt. Before that, it showed you how to go and make a purchase inside the store. So unless you add your card first, you don't see that information. So while users are like, well, why am I adding my card first? But we know that as a customer, on average, the experience is better if you save your save. You're like, oh, I'm going to use Ribitt right away. And so those are decisions that we make based on how users are coming on board and where the flow isn't working.
Great, thanks.
If you get your startup up and going, how do you pay your personal bill?
Maxed out credit card.
Well, I guess in the beginning, when we were not doing this full time and we did not have any investors. It was crowdsourcing time. That time it was, Ribat actually was working full time, and I had some savings from my summer job, and that's how we were getting things going. And then once we brought our investors on, we were able to become employees of the company and take as little as possible, but just the bare bones.
Just enough to eat.
Yeah, that's not enough to eat.
That's it.
I think that's also another piece that I would add. If anybody's thinking to raise money, we have seen lots of people in our peer group. They'll make up their fundraising plan and they'll say, when I raise my $1 million, I'm going to withdraw $100,000 in salary. We just think that that's an absolute.
Then you shouldn't use.
You shouldn't use your investors' money to pay yourself. Enough to pay your bills and move on to the next month. But you're putting your sweat equity, but your investors need to know that it is real sweat equity, and you're not taking a market rate or higher than market rate to pay yourself while the investor is. And so we think about every dollar that can be spent in acquiring a user or acquiring a merchant. Let that dollar go, and everything else happens secondary. And it's part of the ethos that we have instilled in our founding team. So the 5 people who are part of the team from day one, we have told them, you have 2 options. You can take a $60,000 salary, which pays you market rate, but in 12 months, we don't know where we'll be as a company. Or you can work with us and become part of the game and say, hey, I'm willing to work under market rate as long as we can take the company to the next level.
Awesome. Great.
Good.
Thank you.
March 20, next date.
March 20th is our next date here. Everybody, please join us. Have a wonderful day. Let's sell some food and coffee. Please network, chat, meet new people.